Hereby call this workshop to order. This is the superintendent's workshop for August 14th, 2018. Dr. Rendell, you're recognized to present the purpose of the workshop.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank the board members, the members there, the public that are here in attendance, and the members watching on live stream or tape delayed later on. The purpose of the workshop is to share information. We have two topics today that we're going to be sharing information on. One is an update on our health insurance plan, our self-funded health insurance plan. And then the second is a presentation on the recycling initiative that we launched last year at 4 of our schools and the prospects of expanding that to all of our schools. But first we're going to start with this presentation on our health insurance fund. There has been several discussions at several board workshops that when we were building the budget about the health of our health insurance fund, and whether we have reached the savings account total necessary to fund what's called safe harbor, whether we would then need to transfer any additional funds into that account, and whether we're bound to transfer any funds into that account and everything like that. So we asked representatives from Aon to come and present information to us. This is our consultant in the area of health insurance. So with us today, I have Richard Kaufman from Aon, Amanda Brooke-Cross from Aon, and Amy Yutter, who is our benefits specialist. So I'm going to turn the presentation over to Richard and Amanda, and they're going to walk us through some PowerPoint slides. You also have in front of you, board members, a copy of the letters that we have sent to the state regarding the health insurance fund. I had sent these to you in an email a few days ago. The first letter is from Mr. Morrison, dated in 2016, and the second letter is from Mr. Morrison, dated in 2017, and they're the first is a proposal of the plan, and the second is an update of our progress on the plan. I imagine that we'll be sending a similar letter in September or October of this year, updating the state on our status of that plan. And members of the public that are here, there are copies at the table. So now I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Kaufman or Amanda, whoever's going to start.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Let's see, first of all, not used to the clicker here. So the items we'll be covering today, we thought it would be important to go back and give you a little bit of a refresher on the history of the health fund from where you were in fiscal year 17 and then moving forward to where you are today for fiscal year 18 and the fund balance. And then we will review a trend analysis to let you know how your claims trend has been running. And then we'll have a discussion around the safe harbor as far as exactly what is the safe harbor, what is required, and where is your fund balance in comparison to that requirement. Okay, so this is a summary, a monthly summary of your fiscal year June 2017 fund balance. You may recall that as of June 2016, the fund balance was in a negative position of $3.8 million. And due to that, you all made changes as far as the commitments from the board to make transfers of funds into the health plan, and also rate increases were given to the rates for the employees as well. So you can see throughout this chart, based on those changes that were made, you'll see the monthly gains and losses, and you'll see significant gains in a couple of months, particularly the March 2017, where you see the gain of $2.9 million. That's significantly due to the fact that that is the month that the board transferred the $2.33 million into the fund, and had that significant impact to the fund balance at that point in time. And then the increases for the employee side were effective December 2016, although some of those increases didn't go into effect until March, April timeframe, but they were retroactive to December. So that's why you start to see those gains in April, May, and June that are not large gains, but you do start to see some gains there. So that you actually ended up just above into the positive as of June 2017 at the almost $93,000 is where you were for that year. Okay, and then when we move forward to the year that just ended as of June 30th, 2018. Again, you started the year at the $93 million fund balance. I'm sorry, you said $93,000 fund balance in the positive. And then you can see the gains and losses throughout the year. Again, at this point, all of the increases have been implemented. And December 2017 definitely stands out because that is the month that the board transferred the $1.556 million into the fund as was scheduled at that time. And then you will continue to see gains throughout the months, which we'll discuss this in more detail on the next slide as to why we are seeing those gains in the other months as well. But your fund balance did grow in that fiscal year from the $93,000 up to $3.7 million as of June 30th, 2018, which is really amazing to do that over a 2-year period, which is due to a few factors that we will get into on the next slide. So we talked about the board transfers that were made that were significant. We talked about the increases to the employee contributions which were implemented. The other key factor and why your fund balance was able to get to that $3.7 million in 2 years, essentially, we were anticipating meeting the safe harbor level. We'll get into the details of safe harbor in a moment, over 4 years. You were able to get there in 2 years because of what's on this chart here, which is really your claims experience and the trend that actually occurred with your claims in the plan. So let me explain this chart a little bit, and then I'll give you some specific examples. But you'll see, so when I say trend analysis and rolling 12-month trend, what does that mean? I'm comparing the most recent 12 months, whatever the measurement date is. I'm looking at that 12 months of experience ending at that point compared to the 12 months prior to that. So that's why we call it a rolling 12-month trend, because every month that 12-month experience period is moving forward, and we are remeasuring that trend. When we started this, in early 2016, the trends that you were seeing were fairly average, I would say, to what we were seeing across either school districts or public sector or with other clients as well. So if you look at the green line, this is your blended medical and pharmacy trends. So I'm going to focus on the green line for the total. Happy to answer any questions on medical and pharmacy, but I think it's easier to tell the story when you just look at the blended totals. Although you'll also see they're really, for the most part, moving together. So when you started in the beginning of 16, your rolling trend was the 6.2% there, and February just happens to be our starting point here. And from that point forward, you really started to decrease and decrease and decrease to the point of the lowest blended point you had was in June of 2017, where you actually had a negative 8.8% trend, which is really unheard of. And I think I'll pause there to explain what does negative trend really mean? It truly means lower utilization in your plan. So the enrollment in your plan has not decreased. It's been fairly steady. In fact, I think we had a slight increase over the last couple of years, not significant, but a little bit. But the actual utilization, people going to the doctor, going to the hospitals, that having large claims experience, all of those things in total, in aggregate, have actually decreased over time, which this is not a message that I deliver. In fact, I can't think of another school district I have had that has had negative trends. So this is an exception.
Mrs. Justice.
Thank you. Why is that? I mean, we didn't say don't go to the doctor and there was no mandate. I don't believe that there was in like the world that all of a sudden people just got healthier in Indian River County than anywhere else. So
right.
What kinds of...
Yes, it's an easier question to answer when claims are going up because you can see a lot of data and you can pinpoint specific things. In this situation, we don't see any really specific particular reasons for why people are not utilizing the plan. They could be healthier. They could have, it's really hard to pinpoint. You do have the clinic. We know we've got great utilization at the clinic. It's continued to grow, but you did have that in the prior year as well. People know it's there. People have been going to it, but you do have extended hours at the clinic now. The utilization there is really outstanding, and it's a lower cost than if they were going through Florida Blue for the medical services.
It's also a function. I'm sorry. It's also a function of catastrophic claimants, and you've had fewer recently than you had the year before. So you have an agent. If the overall population, the overall numbers are staying the same, one can conjecture that well, they're getting older, so claims should be going up. This is something we just don't see. We don't see this negative trend, and some of it is attributed to catastrophic claimants. The carrier hasn't changed, so the disease management, care management protocols haven't changed. It's just an anomaly.
Can I ask one?
Sure.
Can you define what a catastrophic claim would
Sure.
be?
A catastrophic claimant is somebody that's over a certain dollar threshold. As years ago, a catastrophic claimant would have been somebody over $25,000. But medical inflation goes up, and so it got to $50,000. And now we're starting to see medical inflation going up in pharmacy, new specialty drugs coming in. So a catastrophic claimant might be considered $100,000. But an individual, whether it's an employee or a spouse or a child, that's, for purposes of discussion, over $50,000 in a given year would be considered a catastrophic claimant.
Mrs. Simchik, I'm sorry.
So our provider, question, because usually, I understand that, but also the individual has a lifelong claim amount, let's say, of 2 million?
No longer.
No longer, okay.
Healthcare reform removed lifetime maximums.
Okay, so that can continue.
Right.
That can't stop. So that doesn't explain this either.
Right, because you have what's called stop loss.
Okay.
So the plan is protected against extremely large claimants. That level of stop loss has remained constant as well.
Right. Right, it's at, yeah. Although I'll say for large claims experience, so you're at $175,000 right now is your threshold, with an aggregating deductible of $209,000. I think it's important to note that because that's why your stop loss contract is written. And what that means is, let's say you have one claimant that is $400,000. Even though your stop loss threshold is $175,000, you would pay $209,000 for that claimant. And then stop loss would kick in for anything above that. Now, if you have 4 claimants that are at $200,000, you have to wait until in total that amount between $175,000 and $209,000 has been met. Now, that's a little complicated math to explain, but essentially, if we just talk about in rounded terms, the $175,000, that's your current stop loss level.
So
Mrs.
just,
Justice.
thank you. So just to be clear, when we look at like June or July 17, when we had a fund balance of $92,000 or $64,000, what one catastrophic claimant at $200,000 or two, that would have just,
Right, you would have still been in the negative.
Okay.
One set of premature triplets normally would devastate an account, but in your case, your negative trend was such that you could have absorbed that. But that's not to say moving forward that you would equally be able to absorb it months from now, because you might have transplants and so on. So
so it can change very, I mean,
Absolutely.
it changes so quickly.
Large claimant experience is very volatile. And for your claims experience in 2017 calendar year, you had 4 claimants that exceeded 175. Right now, you have 2 claimants from January to May time period of 2018. You have 2 that are above 175. What we would expect for a group your size and average age and all your demographics is 7 claimants above 175. So again, that, you're talking $600,000, $800,000 that if you even just not had a quote bad claims year, but expected claims year, that could really impact the plan.
So there are school districts in the state that have more than 10 times the number of employees on their plan than you do. They could absorb a premature triplet situation. You're not there, so it would have a bigger
Larger.
impact than perhaps some other districts.
Right.
On the other hand, there are some districts that are smaller than you, and their plan would be absolutely devastated.
Thank you.
Well, and I recall when we first went through the explanation of the downside, if you will, there were 8 or 9. The marketing term I'm familiar with is super consumer. But in this case, it would be large claims. And it seems as though we beat that trend because that's what would be expected.
Right.
And we built our projections around that.
Yes,
So,
exactly.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
you're right.
Yeah, this is speculation, but couldn't I say that maybe due to preventative health maintenance with our wellness center, that some of those catastrophic, situations were caught early?
Absolutely, that is a definite possibility. But it's, because it's preventive, it's a hard thing to measure because you don't know what's
It's like the
necessarily.
premature triplets, like
Right.
prenatal care will only do so much, and at some point, that may not, but it, it's probably a factor.
The transplant, you have one-offs that there's no level of preventive care that's going to solve that. But your claims, you have diabetics, you have hypertensives, that's where preventive care can have an impact on lifestyle changes.
And of course, I'll take any opportunity to tout the good work that this school district did by bringing in that wellness center. So although we don't know, I'd like to bring that out. That's it. Like I said, it's important.
Well, and I will say, when we started the wellness center, we saw a lot more utilization of specialists, which drove our costs up, which again could have been investments
Right.
in the preventative care resulting in this negative trend.
Right, and the
So-
long-term impacts.
So the expansion of the hours of the clinic is to the benefit of not just the employees, but to the plan itself.
Sure, thank you.
So, yeah, as I mentioned, we definitely had the negative trend that really seemed to peak, if that's the right word, peak negatively in that June, on the blended level on the green line in June of 2017. And then it's kind of jumped around since then. Although you'll see in 2018, we've seen this slow, steady progression to actually a positive trend, which is what we would expect. I mean, if you think about it, unless your population is decreasing, a negative trend is not sustainable. For people to continue to decrease and decrease and decrease the utilization of the plan is not realistic if your employees are staying constant. So we definitely anticipated this to return. Right now, on a blended basis, you're at 3.2% rolling trend. So it's no longer negative. We can't predict the future perfectly, but we do anticipate that that will increase a few points more and start to level out. What we're projecting for plan year 19 on a trend basis, blended, is 6.9%. To break that out, sorry, let's see. Okay, so for plan year 19, it's 6.0% for medical and 8.4% for pharmacy to get to that 6.9 projected trend for plan year 19. So you aren't there yet, but we would anticipate that should increase, continue to increase over time.
And
Any
of
other-
course, I have one more question. So then, if we were to continue to say, well, we've seen this, maybe we don't believe you. I mean, let's just say that, like, you said before that we had to project. So what would happen if we decided to not plan for the future? Would we go back to where we were when this whole mess started to begin with?
It's a possibility. That's why you monitor this on a monthly basis. There are always new drugs that are introduced that could have a very steep price tag. Unexpected premature triplets, I keep going back to that, but you do the best you can. You rely on your past experience, and you build in some basic trend assumptions. So the best you can do is really, you need to plan. You can't just, doing nothing is not a plan.
As we saw when I started on this board.
Mrs. Simchik?
Thank you. Which is the exact same for the basis of the conversation, which is why you see, as along with our reserve fund, it's a formula, which is jumping your next slide, but you're supposed to have 3 months of projected claims.
It's
So
2
where
months.
we were being monitored prior to your company, and you've done a wonderful job. Prior to your company coming in, we were being monitored by a company that didn't do so well a job. And based on the trend and the claims at that time, we went into danger. What we were owed a few years ago to bring that into safe harbor, compliant with the statute, was then, as trends go down, that percentage number can change.
Yes.
So that is exactly what happened. So the funding of that decreased because of the trend, the wellness center, and other factors that are unexplainable, but it did.
Yes.
And therefore, the paying back of that money is not necessary according to the state. Have I summed up really basically where we're at?
We're going to get to that.
Yeah.
Right,
because,
yes, on the next
as I
slide,
said,
we will-
because that's very important. And I know we understand. but the public has been led through media and through different just conceptions or rumor that it's a different cause, that
Right.
it's due to high premiums or the school district not paying back, and I think that needs to be cleared. So-
Right. This chart really is the story of why you were able to achieve that level in 2 years and not 4 years. To have negative trend when we were projecting for plan year 18, the trend prediction was 7.5% blended, and for plan year 18. For plan year 17, it was 8%. So, you'll see the variation in those numbers. This is something that, to back up, just to give you a little history of, we aren't just pulling these numbers out of a hat, of course. We have a very robust, we actually have a group that's dedicated to just doing trend analysis, and we have a survey that we do with all of the carriers, what they're seeing with their clients. We look at what we're seeing with our clients as for experience, and also tweaking that based on your plan designs. There's a lot of analysis that goes into determining the projected trend for your group. So that's why you'll see a little bit of variation from year to year. You saw a couple of years ago, pharmacy trends were expected to be double-digit again when some new drugs were increased. That's been brought back down a little bit. So it's something we're constantly analyzing and reevaluating.
I have a couple questions. When we increased the premiums, we also increased the board contribution share to the premiums, did we not?
Yes, we
I
did.
could have sworn we did, about
Yes, we
32%
did,
or
and we did,
something
and we met them
significant.
halfway.
I was going to say, I know that the board contribution is $540 per month per enrollee, and I don't have in front of me what it was prior to that. And also, in addition to that, separately, there was a $27 per employee per month board contribution that was put into the plan for, I believe, 9 months, but I could be wrong on the exact number of months that contribution was made, but it was worth about $420,000 in total.
Right.
So yes, there were additional contributions.
Over a few years, that adds up to quite a lot. Mrs. Simchek.
I'm glad you brought that up. It's very important. I asked Dr. Rendell, I think he might have some charts, but I would like to just rattle off because I want it to be, it's afternoon TV, we're really probably not broadcasting to a lot of people.
Both
but-
of you, pay attention.
Yes, but we pay between 38 to 96% of the health insurance premium to our employees. In the cheapest plan, we pay 96% for the employee only. We pay 96%. Then 56% for the employee plus their spouse, 58% for the employee and children, and 50% of the family plan. In the mid-plan, we pay 83% of the employee, 49% of the employee and spouse, and 50% of the employee and children, and 44% of the family plan. And then the high cost, which is an option to the employee, we pay 72% of the employee only, 43% of the employee and spouse, and 44% of the employee and the children, and 38% of the family plan. And I had asked Dr. Rendell for this today. It was my thought, because there's been a lot of media and there's been a lot of some employees, and some people feel that the raising of the premiums and then the payback of the safe harbor was all off the backs of the employees, which is further from the truth. In fact, it's from the hard work of previous boards, the wellness center, employees in general just having good health, and obviously good monitoring that helped ensure that that fund, that safe hunt, was not only reached, but it was reached because the 3 months of claims, that total ended up being lower than where we were, 3 or 4 years ago. I'm almost done. So I wanted it clear that while we have a couple of things going on different from premiums, that in all the chatter of social media, some people would say, oh, look, we pay so much and all that. And then some people who don't work for government said, oh my gosh, you're paying that?
Yeah.
I pay $900. I pay $600 for my insurance. Now, I have had some problems with the 3 separate plans. And I know Mr. Frost,
have?
No, you have the floor.
Mr. Frost has heard years before that might be an issue. I am glad, because it seems to be important to the employees, that you assure us that we're not losing our buying power by having 3 separate plans. So I will leave that alone. But I just somehow don't see how you, when you reduce your buying plan, but you guys are the professionals and do all those figures. So I trust that. But I just wanted the public, whoever loops this, reround, clicks on, but does hear how much we pay. And this board even picked up half of the premium, am I right about that? Half of the premium increase.
It depended on the
On the
plan
plan.
selection and everything.
And that
so
was, again, all
not
sorts of
necessarily half in every case.
convoluted
Right.
plans, because we have 3 plans, which makes not only that, but the soft term dollar, although it may not think, are the soft term dollar of our accounting in our departments to keep this all straight with that is a nightmare in alone to argue in one plan. But I'm glad the employees like their 3 plans. I'm glad that you say that 3 plans are fine, and I'm just glad that we can bring this all out. And as I said, that's why I had this made, because the amount that we pay for our employees into the plans, that never comes out. And so those high numbers needed to be touted today.
That's fair.
And I would be curious to know, just back of the envelope calculations lead me to be curious about this. When the board increased premiums, how much that has accumulated over the 3 years. It could be more than the 1.5 million, or it could be very close to it. Also, in thinking about our census, there's been a bit of hullabaloo about a number of retirements. And as boomers retire, the census changes. Could that be explanatory for this phenomenon?
We do look at your demographics. I don't have demographic data with me, but we have not really seen a noticeable change in your demographics yet. At this point, we have not.
Being a public school account, public sector, you have something that most private sector employers in the state of Florida don't have, which is retirees. And retirees are generally grouped into 2 sections, pre-65 and post-65. If it's post-65, you could coordinate with Medicare and get significant savings. The pre-65s are always the issue, and they will stay on your plan. It's unlikely, other than for some other reason, they're staying on your plan. So as your employees get older and they start to retire, they're going to be pre-65 most likely, and they are in those disease management years, and you don't have something to coordinate with. So you're paying, the biggest share for those folks.
And while the pre-65 retirees do pay the full premium for the plan, but Florida statute requires that their premium can't exceed the total premium for the actives of the population. So there's definitely is a disparity when you look at those 2 different groups as far as claims versus premiums, income, that the pre-65s on the average per person do cost significantly more than the actives, which is
So the
not
premiums that they're paying 100% of are really tagged for a younger population that's more likely healthy, but they're older, and they bring with them conditions, and therefore those premiums that they're paying 100% are insufficient to cover their true costs.
They're a risk pool that needs to be subsidized by other portions of the census.
In a sense,
Until they
yes.
move over to the.
To the post-65.
Post-65, and then they are separate.
Got it. Thank you. Mrs. Simchin.
I'd like to interject now, since, as an outgoing board member, and I wish there was the other board member that's going to remain, it's never a good time. Mr. Frost, I think Mr. Searcy, we've had these discussions. Some other school districts have, and we're happy with your services, but this would, RFP for a fully funded. This might be, we have talked about this, creating in people at home don't do this. They don't, safe harbor, and I'm trying to explain to the public, safe harbor is like saying, I'm not paying for house insurance, but I'm gonna put $1,000 aside for a rainy day. That's kind of how our health insurance operates in a very, simple term. Fully funded would be we pay the premium, and it's going to be more.
Yes.
However, at some point, which is, and honestly, and it's a different subject, but that's why we never addressed the desegregation, not we, but collectively as a school district, because to go and address it, you have to go to court, and you have to pay fees, and many people kicked it down the road till it ended up with us. I just throw this out there, not to leave a nightmare with you, but, and I don't know when a good time would be, because, but there's certainly, you could certainly go out to, obviously your contract's on. we can't produce an RFP overnight. But futuristically, a new board could go out for an RFP and explore that in a competitive world, just to see, because that would be to me, I think that would be a safer place to be. But I wouldn't mind your feedback, even though it's your business and you operate on this side of the fence.
In fact, when we went out to bid for the medical plan last year, we asked for both fully insured and self-funded proposals. And Florida Blue's fully insured proposal was significantly more expensive than the self-funded. The reason for that is severalfold. There are taxes that are paid when you're fully insured that you're not paying self-funded. The carrier is then at risk versus you being at risk being self-funded, so they will build in a level of margin that can be conservative. And as your trend is likely to, as you can see, start to bend upwards, they're going to take that into consideration. So in general, we would see a fully insured plan for a group of your size costing perhaps 8 to 10% more than being self-funded. You've been very fortunate, and you've gotten the benefit of positive claims experience by being self-funded. If you were fully insured and you had great claims experience, the carrier is the one being rewarded because they're getting all the premium and lower claims.
Sure.
But
Could you
They would have
take
all the
the safe harbor, though, and roll it into your first year?
Yes, I mean, that, you could. You
I-
could.
I-
But
I
then,
know
yeah,
that's-
long-term, it,
I understand that, but it's just something I mentioned because St. Lucie is fully funded. I just wanted to let you know. So, I mean, but that's just exploratory. I think it should be explored every so often.
and we agree. And it depends on the risk tolerance of the group. If you are risk averse,
Like, this is a nice time.
right. If you are risk averse, then fully insured makes sense. Let the carrier be fully at risk and pay the monthly premium. But if you feel like you'll continue to have positive experience and it's going to be below trend and you want to gain the benefit of that cash flow, then remain self-funded. But we agree that every 2 to 3 years you should re-examine the funding arrangement. The claims will be the claims. It's the other components that will change.
I want to say thank you for that, because as a board member who joined this board, and literally the first meeting that we had was impasse with the teachers union over this issue. You know, it was ignored for some time, and it wasn't being explored for 2, 3 years, and so every 2 or 3 years. So I think that I take your advice to heart, and I think with a new board seated, if that board would like to explore that, I think it's something to look at. I think my biggest focus today would be ensuring that we make solid decisions so that going forward right now with the plan that we have, we create some sense of continuous commitment to our employees, right? That we have a healthy fund and that we do right by them. So I guess my question now is, I know we've discussed that there's a pending transfer that may not be necessary. So are we discussing that today, or are we?
We got one more slide.
Okay.
And so I think some of those questions will be answered on the next slide.
Mr. Searcy.
You indicated there's the disparity between the pre-65 retirees and the over 65. How is the best way to handle that and not be a socialist system? I mean, taking the guys at the low end and making them pay more, basically, to cover that.
Yeah, the
Right.
pre-65s are a conundrum for every public sector group. They all try to find some solution. In the case of the district, we're going to be implementing CANA RX as Elect RX as a means to try to get some control on the pharmacy costs. There are some endeavors being made by your on-site clinic company, Care Here, to start having interlocation agreements. Not in place yet, but as your pre-65 retirees are dispersed, they can perhaps, excuse me,
Sorry to bring that up.
perhaps go to a clinic elsewhere in the state, which might also assist with your claims.
We have quite a few programs that we're looking into for the future to hope to address, not specifically that age group, but all of our age groups that may help bridge that gap.
But there is no silver bullet for
How far down the
pre-65
line is it?
retirees.
I mean,
We have some things that are going into play in the next 6 months to a year It takes time to try to pinpoint the areas of concern with certain age groups. We've pinpointed diabetes as one of our biggest issues with our health insurance fund, so we're doing everything we can with Care Here to try to address that issue. We actually now carry some of the supplies in the center, so it may not be a pre-65 only issue, but it's going to hit those people.
Are you finding that those pre-65 retirees are utilizing Care Here?
Yes. A lot of our retirees stay on our health insurance plan specifically so that they can use the clinic.
Moving along.
All right.
So our last slide here, so to recap, when we are referring to things like safe harbor and fund balance and all of that, why are we talking about that? So it's all related to Florida Statute 11208 requirements. And if you were to go, and anyone can, go look up that statute and to read it, it would be a very short read. It's less than a page long, and to be honest, it's fairly vague. It's not very specific as far as to what the requirements are. And let me just say for just a moment, too, who is subject to the Florida 11208 requirements? Any self-funded city or county government, school districts, anyone who falls in that public sector realm is subject to this requirement. And it's for any self-funded benefits. It could be for you all, it is medical and pharmacy. It is not your dental and vision, but if your dental and vision ever did go self-funded, it would also be subject to this statute. And the explicit requirements within the statute that you will see is that the filings are due 90 days after the end of your fiscal year to determine your current status and your 3-year projected status of the fund. And there is a reference to the certification of actuarial soundness, so that's definitely where I do the entire filing, but that's the very specific part that they require that I'm involved in, is to certify that your plan is actuarially sound or is not, but we have a plan to get there. Those are the explicit requirements. The things that are not explicit but that we are aware of due to the long-term experience we've had with working with the Office of Insurance Regulation and having those relationships built over time and experience and having lots of public sector clients, is that they do require this safe harbor fund balance, even though that's not part of the statute per se. And the safe harbor fund balance requirement is that you have 60 days of projected incurred claims in a fund. And so that's the first piece. And then also, they do not want to see any projected losses over the next 3 fiscal years when we show that page. And if you're not meeting the requirement, as you all are familiar with and what you went through with the last couple of years, if you haven't met the requirement, you need to provide a plan of action for getting back to that safe harbor. And you all did that very well over that time period. It's actually the first time that I've seen them approve a 4-year funding plan. Up to that point, I had only seen a 3-year funding plan, so that was a first. But you definitely had a very clear plan of action, and they appreciated that and approved that. And then this last bullet point gets to your point, Ms. Simchick, that once the fund balance is meeting the safe harbor requirement, regardless of whatever your plan of action was, no additional funding above and beyond that safe harbor level is required by the state. So from their perspective, they are thrilled that you got back to the safe harbor, and no additional funds are required from their perspective to be transferred.
Mrs. Simchick.
We had a board member concerned that we had to make that as a decision, but that decision is not necessary based on your filings, correct? And
Correct.
the numbers?
Yes, no, it is not. So the state doesn't require it, and then I think to help what you're getting to is this last section here where we talked about earlier, your fund balance as of June 30th, 2018 is $3.7 million. And we will be filing with the state will be due towards the end of September. So we're working on that filing right now. But the projected required fund balance as of June 30th of 2019 is $2.5 million. Now, if you were here a couple of years ago, you might recall that number was closer to $3 million. The reason it's at 2.5 now is because of that negative trend again, because it's based on 60 days of claims. And so your claims have decreased. So as a percentage basis, that required level has decreased as well. So what we are on a projected basis with that 6.9 blended trend, as we talked about earlier, we're projecting the requirement will be 2.5 million. So right now you have, you're not only meeting it, but you do have a little bit of a buffer between the 2.5 million required and the 3.7 million you have in the plan today. Now, you still have a full 12 months to see where that 3.7 million ends up at next year, but that's the status of the plan today. So based on that, there would not be an additional requirement according to the state.
Mrs. Simchik.
Also, I can't give the number of years, I want to say 6, but part of the problems, again, there wasn't sitting board members here at the time, and nor was it me. I mean, I was in the middle too. We ended up with this is where we're at, but it started prior to your services. Not the careful monitoring, and also no premium increase for, was it 6 years? Do we remember?
Prior to the deficit situation, I am not certain how many
It was
years.
many.
It was at least 3.
It was many years, and I can't give the amount because, again, it straddled another board's prior. We kind of just came in and where we were left at.
Right.
But that was part of the problem, too. The premiums were not increased for us or our employees for many years. So.
Correct.
They were overly subsidized by the board at the time. There's a program that was overly subsidized, and premiums were held artificially low through subsidies by the board. And then when premiums were increased, they were increased primarily to the board. And as a result of negative claims trend, we are now in a better fiscal position as a result of having revenues tied to costs and not overly subsidizing the program any longer, which is allowing our fund to increase. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Justice.
So just so that I understand, if the claims had trended as you expected that they would, right? We haven't seen rate increases for the past 2 years. Would we have seen rate increases?
Yes, if claims experience had at that time, I believe we had said the blended increase for claims was expected to be 8%. So if you had realized that 8%, yes, in these 2 years, we would have definitely been talking about, just on a status quo basis, something, I'm just throwing out ballparks here, between 6 and 8% rate increases potentially in these 2 years of rate passes that you would have been considering, whether that was making plan changes to mitigate that, but yes, we would have been discussing rate increases, not what do we do with a rate pass. Absolutely.
Right. My wife is a human resources director, and she keeps asking me how because I think they had between 6 and 8% both years. She asked what, and I said it's finally right-sized.
And we're anticipating not having a rate increase because this year
This year.
either. So that's 3 years of not having a rate increase.
Yes, yeah, that is not a message. I mean, it was a very difficult message, I know, to deliver in that year of the increases, but to be able to have these 3 years of not having rate increases is definitely good news, that we are not delivering, are able to deliver to our other clients.
Without
mostly.
modifying benefits.
Right.
Anything else?
Any further questions from the board? I do want to go back to the slide, the graph slide. So
It's trending up.
part of this is the fact that we had lower claims costs. But part of those lower claims costs is that we've gone out and found products that are cheaper,
Yes.
less expensive to
Yes, sir.
both our employees and the district.
Yes, sir.
So lower claims costs because either our people aren't as sick or medically injured as they were in the past, but also because we've done a better job managing the plan.
Yes, sir.
Finding products that are cheaper and are less expensive and more responsive. The clinic probably did play a big part in this as well. So, I think the negative trend overall in that picture, we've already started to see a slight uptick or increase there. And Amanda is accounting for that in the 6% blended trend, 6.9% blended trend going forward. So the thing is that 3 years ago, we were in a very bad place with this self-insured insurance fund, health insurance fund, and right now we're in a very good place. But moving forward, we need to make sure that we're monitoring the plan on a monthly basis, still continuing to look for products that can provide services at a lower cost, expanding the use of the clinic if we can, if it makes sense, and that kind of thing. And, right now we seem to be doing all those things right. The HITEF committee meets once a month. They review all this information. The HITEF committee has members of our retirees are on there, our current employees are on there, professionals are on there, and that kind of thing. So we seem to be doing pretty well with the managing of the self-insured health insurance fund. And, we need to be proud of that fact, that we've gotten to this place as quickly as we have. So, this was to share information with the board. Are there any other questions?
I rattled off a lot of figures, but I'm just going to rattle off 3 one more time for any media that's out there. In the 3 plans that we have for our employees, on the 5770 plan, the board pays 72% of the premium for the employee. In the 5772 plan for the employee, the board pays 83% of that premium. In the 5774 plan, the board pays 96% of the employee's premium. Now, the employee can choose different cafeteria styles or child and family and whatever, but in this day and age, to pay up to 96% of a premium for an employee is a very important thing to point out.
And I know we've talked about this idea of transferring money into something where it may not be necessary to make that transfer. I'd rather see, personally, for me, and I don't know if this is something that we can discuss, is this something that we discuss, or is this?
Depends. Mention it and
You'll let me
we
know.
can discuss it.
Great.
We won't take any action here
I want to see
today.
whatever funds that we have working for classrooms and teachers in our district. The money is best when we're able to meet student needs and teacher needs. So any funds that we have that we can use to help our teachers and to help provide services for our students, we need to be doing our best with those funds. That's the job at hand. The job isn't to save money. The job is to use the money we get to provide the best services possible.
Mr. Searcy.
On that same slide there, is my understanding that, and looking at it, it looks like the trend right now, based on your projections there, is going to be higher than it's ever been over the last several years. I mean,
Right,
it's gonna be
over this
6.9.
time period. Yes. Yeah, you started out at 6.2 at this, just by chance. We started the measurement date at February of 16, not for any particular reason necessarily. So I don't know all the specifics of your history before that, but I would say even at that time, that 6.2% was lower than the average of what other districts were experiencing. So you were already at that point a little, not significantly, but a little bit on the lower side.
But this is our district, and you're saying it's going to be higher than it's ever been.
Correct.
Over the last, since 16, I guess, right?
And it's not, when we set the 6.9% blended, we do take into account your population and what's going on, has been going on with your plan. We do look at that, but particularly due to a few different factors. So the size of your population is not one of the largest districts. So your trend volatility is definitely, the volatility is more, you're more likely to have volatility, I should say, on the trend side. Another factor is that what we have seen, and not across, this is not 100% across the board, but what we have seen at different times is when plans have experienced not necessarily negative trend, but even very low single-digit trends, that there is an upswing after that. When people haven't utilized the services, then there's an upswing, and we've actually seen where with some of our larger school districts, actually, where I've seen that in the 2 to 3% range, all of a sudden go to 11, 12, 13% trend. So that's a factor that we consider when we set that. And then there is the other factor where we do our surveys, both internally and externally, that help us develop the overall, combining all of those factors of what we feel like is appropriate for projecting forward. So it is higher, but the negative trend is very much an anomaly that we don't see typically.
My experience has been when you see an anomaly in a trend, that usually means a correction's coming.
Right.
So
So what are you saying?
that it's going to go up. Kind of to your point about it, the projection being 6.9%, that there's less water under the hull as we move forward.
I just have one other.
Yes, sure, so you recognize her.
On the June 30, 2018 balance, you're indicating 3.724 million should be our balance in June of 2018, actually. Okay. But we put in almost $3.9 million to make that balance that. Is that correct?
So in this,
Put the two,
if you combine the
1.7.
2 years, so you put 2.33 in the first year, and then the 1.56 in the second year.
So
that-
basically, we put in 3.8, almost $3.9 million, and now our balance is going to be 3.72, right?
Yes.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chair, I'd ask for a 5-minute recess while we reset for the next presentation.
Very good. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're at recess until 1:56. And we are back. Dr. Rendell, you're recognized. Continued presentations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next presentation is about a recycling initiative that we started last year. We piloted it at 4 of our schools last year. It was very successful. It's a partnership that we actually did with the county commission, and we'd like to take a look at expanding that to all of our schools over the next 2 years, not necessarily tomorrow, but over the next 2 years. And so we have a lot of people here to help us look at the possibility of expanding the program and talk about the success of the program. Bob Michael, our Director of Physical Plant, is going to lead us through the presentation. With him is Ann Riven, one of our other maintenance employees, coordinator of custodial service. Can't read it from here. But then also from Waste Management, or from the county, we actually have Himanshi Mehta and Stephanie Fonville, and they're going to talk about, and you've seen them before, talk about our experience with them with the pilot and how we could look to expand that in the district. So I'm going to turn it over to Bob.
Good afternoon, board members.
Good afternoon.
As Dr. Rendell said, we'd like to talk to you today about the expansion of the recycle program that we started last January. As I walk you through the slides, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask me them. At the end, I kind of wrap up some benefits of the whole program. So, our partnership with the Solid Waste Disposal District and Waste Management started in January of 2018. The pilot program initiated at 4 schools. In January of 2018 was Pelican Island Elementary, Storm Grove Middle School, Rosewood Magnet, and Freshman Learning Center. Before the pilot recycling program initiatives, the trash that was sent to the Indian River County landfill between January of 2017 and April of 2017 was 516.81 tons, or approximately 1,033,620 pounds. So the monthly average of that 4-month period was 129.2 tons. After the pilot recycling program initiative, the trash that was sent to the landfill between January of 2018 and April of 2018, same time period, was 479.69 tons, or roughly 959,380 pounds. And that monthly average is 119.92 tons. So based on that, we believe the recycling program helped us reduce the municipal solid waste going to the landfill by 9.28 tons during that period. The reasoning for looking at a 4-month snapshot, we didn't want to skew the figures. If we looked at a 2017, which we didn't have all the months with our recycling program in effect, so we wanted to look at just a 4-month period where it was apples for apples. So the cost of the recycling program at the 4 pilot schools, the annual cost of service currently with the increased demand at the 4 public schools is $21,840. Annual cost of service prior to the program was $18,928. So the incremental cost to expand to those 4 schools was $2,912. So for that small incremental amount, we were able to reduce the amount of waste going into the landfill by 9.28 tons. The pilot program is designed to serve as a model to be expanded to the remaining 16 public schools. Numerous schools have asked how they could bring the recycling program to their schools. The Solid Waste Disposal District staff estimated a one-time cost of $38,000 to provide the remaining public schools with the necessary recycling containers and equipment to implement the same robust recycling program as we have at our 4 pilot schools. Waste Management is offered to provide the 64-gallon carts and the 35-gallon carts at each school. The estimated cost of that donation is $9,700. Recycle Across America has a donation program to provide 400 labels, and the estimated cost savings would be $700. And the Solid Waste Disposal District has committed to provide 50% of the funding for the balance of the remaining funds required to purchase the equipment so that we can implement the program at the other schools. The result is that for a cost of $13,800, we could partner with SWDD to purchase the recycling containers and equipment for a future phased implementation of the program at our remaining schools.
So before we leave that slide, I do want to make sure the last 2 bullets, we understand that the Solid Waste Disposal District, the County Commission, has already offered to pay the 50%, the $13,800, that half, or their half, so to speak, of the equipment purchase.
Correct. Our spend is $13,800,
Right.
basically.
Very nice of you. Mrs. Simchick.
Can you repeat that? Is it the 13.8 that we're paying, or half of the 13.8?
No, 13.8. So, so we're splitting the balance, which would be 28,000 roughly
Yep.
with the SWDD. So the proposed FY 18-19 expansion from 4 schools to 14 schools, and we talked about a phased approach. We're estimating that we could reduce the amount of municipal solid waste in the landfill by 32.34 tons, and the incremental cost to expand the program in phase 1 would be $7,280. So that is basically going from biweekly pickups to weekly pickups at the additional 10 schools. The FY 19, FY 20 proposed expansion, we're estimating we could reduce our amount of municipal solid waste going to the landfill by 46.2 tons. And once again, the incremental cost is going to be the same. It's basically going from a biweekly pickup to a weekly pickup of the recycled containers. So the cost of a pickup is $28, so it's basic math, basically, the incremental cost.
That's over the course of the year?
Yes.
So it would be
absolutely.
14, okay.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So that would be an additional 72.80 this year if we were to move forward with 10 more schools, and then it would be 14
So you're looking at
By
increased
60.
cost for waste management of $14,000 a year?
over 2 years,
Over
correct. Yeah, to implement the system fully and have.
But then every other year after those 2 years, then you're looking at an increased cost of $14,000?
No, it'd be the same cost, yeah. So once we had the program fully initiated, our costs would be solid at that point, yeah. So the benefits of promoting recycling in the district. Children who are taught to recycle at a young age can be some of the most effective advocates to promote recycling in the community. Reducing the amount of solid waste generated by the district into the local landfills promotes good stewardship of the environment and encourages the development of community engagement that builds a sustainable community. And the state of Florida set a statewide mandate in 2013 of recycling 75% of the waste by the year 2020. So even with expanding, and I talked to Stephanie today about this, when I ran the numbers, even with this expansion to all the schools and having a robust program, we're still going to be shy of that 75%. So we're going to have to look at other opportunities of how we can reduce our footprint when it comes to municipal solid waste.
Got to get those organics down.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So something I'd like to propose to the board in the future, and I'm not prepared today to get into the details of it, is quite frankly getting out of the municipal solid waste hauling business.
Yes.
I truly feel I truly feel it's and to not get off the slides for a minute, I think it's a safety concern foremost. We have a 25-ton machine that we drive up and down this county from from Indian River Academy to Fellsmere every day, back and forth. And to me, there's a huge risk there, being in that business.
Well, and as we shift to recycling, the only way to capture the fiscal gain is to not tip every can every day.
Absolutely.
You can downsize your container,
Right.
And that will save you. You can downsize the number of tips. As you said, it's $28 a tip or whatever. Right now, we have a one rate tip. We have 2 employees, I guess. We have a number of employees in a truck that requires fixing, and when it's not being repaired, we're still paying somebody to tip those cans.
Absolutely.
To empty those dumpsters, sorry. So I'm excited that we're moving in this direction because it's another business that doesn't make a whole lot of sense for the district to be in.
Yeah.
And also, as we move towards a more efficient system, the district will receive those financial benefits. So it certainly makes it a lot easier to do the right things. And one thing, Mr. Himanshu, Mr. Mehta, sorry, has told me is about the cost of operating the landfill. So looking at this from a fiscally conservative piece of this, what does it take to open a 10-acre cell of landfill?
So we're currently under expansion right now for a 10-acre cell and a closure project, and roughly about $10 million is what it takes. So $1 million an acre is what we're looking at to build, to expand the facility.
Right, and it's not as though there's unlimited land out there by the interstate, is there?
No. I mean, we project we have room for about another 60-plus years out there, but, that's not a lot of time when you think about it. So, my grandchildren, great-grandchildren, so certainly they're going to be having to make decisions about where do we go next,
Right.
and to expand the landfill, so.
Okay. All good points about the fiscal impact of these projects. Mrs. Simchik?
But, and I'm all for going green and recycling, but if we're talking about $10 million cells and then also soft-term dollar of your employees as well as medical, as we just talked about, to cover all that, we're picking up an awful lot of the cost. I would think that some of the, I would think that we would be, I would hope that we would be afforded more in containers and things like that from the county. That's my feeling. I feel we're paying too much. That's all. I think our buy-in's too much when we're, but, nobody wants to talk that because it's not nice, because it's not that I don't want to go green and nobody wants to go green and we don't want to do that, but if it's $10 million to open up a cell and you have people that have to operate it and you have to provide them with, well, actually, you're subcontracting that, aren't you?
Yeah, it's about
I forgot
2.5
about
million a
that.
year to operate the landfill?
Yes, they subcontract that fee, so that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure. I'd like to hear other board members because, this is all great, but, and it's a program that we buy into with our people doing it, but how did we come up with, that's nice, the half, and it sounds nice, but I don't know why it's not whole.
All right, well,
or
every Tuesday
different
morning.
configurations. Different configurations I'd like to see. I'm not sure. I'd like to hear Mr. Susi.
If I might, Mr. Chair,
Sure.
I'd like to
Go
give
ahead,
Bob the
Mr.
opportunity to walk through this slide.
Oh, sorry.
Just
Yeah,
to
that's
make
good.
sure, he talked about getting out of the solid waste disposal district, or business, so to speak. And, I'd like him to kind of explain these numbers and that kind of thing, so.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. So one of the biggest issues that we have is the CNG, the compressed natural gas truck that we currently own. It was purchased in November of 2013, came online in March of 2014. The cost of the vehicle back then was $272,000. Replacement cost today is around $300,000. Since FY16, the numbers that we pulled from finance, we've basically had $60,341 in repairs and then also in downtime. And where that downtime comes in is when the truck is down, and we have a very old diesel truck that's currently right now not roadworthy, we have to sub that out to City of Vero Beach or to Waste Management if the City of Vero Beach isn't available to provide service to the schools. So that's included in that cost, that downtime. We also have a compressed natural gas fueling station over at Oslo Middle School. It's in need of $22,190 in repairs currently. An estimated cost to replace it is $58,199 with a new system. So if we were going to stay with CNG, my recommendation is we're going to purchase a new one instead of put $22,000 into an old piece of equipment. Since its inception, the operating cost for that fuel station has been $84,012. So that's everything from breakdowns, repairs, the cost of electricity to run it, the cost of the gas. That's the actual cost for that period of time. I personally feel these capital funds could be used better in the district than in hauling trash.
So I have two questions. Is the only vehicle that uses the CNG
Correct.
the
The
waste
Peterbilt
management truck? Or
waste management, yeah,
the garbage truck?
refuse truck,
Refuse truck.
correct.
Okay, so, and does, the county doesn't use it for any of their vehicles? Because I guess the county also has some heavy equipment or something that takes CNG?
I know Waste Management runs CNG, and we
Okay.
had reached out to them about a year and a half ago to see if some of those costs or things like repairs could be done there, but because of liability reasons, they wouldn't be able to work on our truck. So right now, we're taking the truck to Lakeland. Our transportation department doesn't have the mechanics that can work on compressed natural gas. They also don't have the facilities because it requires, it's very volatile
Right.
fuel, so it requires special facilities for you to even work on a system like that. So currently, the McNeilish truck in Lakeland is where we get it serviced. We'll take it to Palm Peterbilt for the basics down in St. Lucie County, but a majority of the work has to be done at Lakeland for the truck.
Okay.
I think Mr. Frost's question was about the fueling station.
Yes, the
None
fueling
of
station.
our other vehicles.
Right, no other
Sorry,
vehicles.
we don't have any other vehicles that utilize that
Correct,
fueling
no.
station?
No, the buses use propane.
That's what I thought.
Propane's not an option for a refuse vehicle because it doesn't have the same BTUs needed for the energy to push the truck, basically.
Your question was, does the county have CNG vehicles? Where does
Right.
the county have their CNG vehicles repaired and all of those things?
The county does not have CNG vehicles.
No.
Yeah, probably propane, I'm thinking they would have,
Um,
or diesel.
I
I
think
think
they-
predominantly diesel, yeah, I
Diesel.
don't think we've gone to that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a specialty fueling station and a one-off truck, so that we can be in the business of tipping every can every day and taking it to the landfill. Okay, well,
How quickly
I'm
can we
excited
get
to hear
that?
that there's an opportunity to correct this situation, and listen, since I was a candidate, I've been looking at this, and I'm glad to see other people looking at it and realizing that, you know, the private sector probably could be a lot better, and also our waste stream be much more efficient in the process, and we could do better things for the community, the environment, and the budget by addressing this issue. So, Mr. Searcy.
It's also an environmental issue, because my understanding is that when they finish their route, they wash the truck out down at Oslo Middle School, out
Sometimes
behind
happens.
the lunchroom. And I can't imagine how we've been allowed to continue to do that. That's sick. That is sick.
Yeah, that
And
truck
the
is pretty
sooner you
unsat
get-
looking.
The sooner we get it done, the better. I mean, I know the superintendent knows that I've been badgering him on a regular basis about this thing, but, you know, tomorrow is too late.
So that would be my question. How, I mean, it's being brought forward today. What action needs to be taken in order for us to take the next step and to,
We would need to explore, you know, putting the vehicle up for auction and that kind of thing to recoup the cost of that, to go towards the cost of, in contracting with, you know,
With waste management.
with waste management, which we have to do when the truck is out anyway.
Right. Mr. Searcy.
But what is the cost per day when we have to utilize the city?
I don't have the numbers in front of me, Chairman, or Mr. Searcy, but I
$1,000, isn't it?
believe it's around $700 to $800 a day to do
But
that.
if we had a contract with Waste Management to do the same thing, it probably would not be on that spot $1,000 a day, or whatever number you want to use. So that's probably should be explored now, and the sooner the better. I just,
Right.
start the school and,
And if we,
on that.
thank you, and if we downsize the dumpster, then the human behavior starts to change too. So we can save money and also sort of force the hand of the waste stream as well to make sure more gets recycled that is possible to be recycled, and that we have the right size cans and the right number of tips for our waste stream, so that it'd be a much more efficient system and probably save us a ton of money on the operating side too.
Right, this idea is tied in because as we expand the recycling initiative, so we have less solid waste that has to be taken away, we have a fixed model right now. We have a single truck that's going to go to every dumpster, theoretically, every day. And if the dumpsters don't need to be tipped every day, we can't save any money if we go to an outsourced model than smaller containers or less, tips per day. So,
Right.
that kind of thing. So, this is tied to the recycling initiative. We're going to have less solid waste to get rid of.
Mr. Searcy.
question, what happens to all of this recycled material when Waste Management or whoever picks it up? What happens to it? Does it go to the landfill?
It comes to the landfill facility where it's not going into the landfill to get buried, obviously, but we have a separate area where the material will be dumped, and then it's transported to a processing facility in Fort Pierce where everything is separated out. So it's a both manual and a mechanical process where at the end of the process, you'll have, bales of aluminum, bales of paper, cardboard, things like that. So it's a processing.
And from there, where does it go?
So then it's up to the processor to market that materials to an end user that they'll be able to get paid for that material.
Back to industry
Make something
is
out
the
of it.
answer, right. Mrs. Simchick.
So all is great, and I agree with everything, except for that's why I was talking about the $13,000 there. So when the subcontract is, I'm sorry, I mean, you're coming as representative, so, the people behind you don't get to see me doing this, but I
Right.
have to negotiate. We don't just go, wow, this is a great idea, I have to negotiate. So as you were talking about the end user going there, that money is made as it's sold to the separating plant, and then money is made as they resell it. And that's why I'm asking for, instead of 50% for the containers, I'm asking, I would think, because of the soft term dollar, wouldn't we want to all be a part of this, and this is the school district, and then that money is made up in the soft term, not only through the county, but again, the subcontractors, and as you said, per cell, you know, so is there any way we can renegotiate the 50% of the 13.8? That's all I'm looking at. I don't see a problem in asking. That's our job,
Right.
fiscal responsibility.
No, good,
So-
good question. I certainly am not in a position to negotiate. It's something that would have to go back to the county commission through the county administrator. So-
Making our valid points of how much money we're saving with that cell, and obviously the money through the recycle that is bought twice, bought by the processing, and
One-
then they'll.
One thing I want to clarify is if we looked at the last probably 3 months, 6 months, and even beyond, there's zero revenue coming back to the county for this material. So I don't want the impression that we get material from you or the residents and that there's all of this cash coming back.
No, I
There
know,
is
but
no
when you
cash coming back.
subcontract to the landfill people, that's where they're selling to the other end, or mill person.
I mean, there's a.
When it's separated at the landfill, then they take that down to the processor in Fort Pierce, I believe you said?
No,
It's
no,
not-
everything is mixed when it comes in.
Right.
All the mixed materials are taken to Fort Pierce. And we don't have an expense at this time, but we don't have a revenue either,
Sure,
okay?
but that's built in a contract that we don't control with who you subcontract with the
Right,
waste. So I know you can't speak on that, but that would be my only thing, is to see that number sharpened for us to get on board and help you.
So you,
as well.
because they see the benefit of
They
that
see-
interaction, and we don't see the benefit. This is the only thing I'd say, because I agree with you, and I'm a car dealer's
I'm just
daughter, so
asking.
I'm all
Yeah,
about
yeah.
negotiation,
So-
don't
so
get me wrong.
Let's see if they, right now, it's a great idea.
You're right.
And we're not making an action, but hopefully they could come back with a better deal.
So you're right, except for the fact I'm going to say this, speaking because I think we've had a very good relationship with the county. As we've contracted with them with school resource officers, we have seen the county step up in a way that other counties and other districts have not seen. So in this case, because it's a win for our environment and our entire community, and our students will be learning from it, and it's a partnership, I don't necessarily have an issue with that. Listen, if we can get a better deal, if they can come back and say, you know, we'll do 75%, then that's fantastic. Or if we have, you know, better negotiations as far as with waste management and when we make this transition. But I do want to say to the county commissioners who may watch this later, we appreciate their generous partnership for a lot of the things that we do with them. That's all I wanted to say.
And if I could say something too, I did want to come to your question. I did want to give the encouragement that the county is, obviously, we're very devoted to recycling. Personally, my job and my description, you know, that I'm a very big recycling advocate. So working with the school district is not the only recycling endeavor that we're working on. We've been looking at the 75% goal ever since I was hired. We have been doing everything that we could to figure out how can we reach that 75% goal. So since I've started, we've improved our recycling at our county buildings, because we have a number of county buildings. We want to lead by example. We're currently trying to make that system more robust, so we're looking at some costs there. And we've started recycling at some of the beaches. All of our county beaches, they now have recycling. We didn't have that before. Really excited about that. And we've implemented recycling at some of our county parks, and we're hoping to even work on that and expand that a little bit more. So I absolutely understand what you're saying and where you're coming from, and I did want to encourage that this isn't the only project that we're looking at, and the only partnership that we're looking at to try to increase our recycling to that goal. So we're very excited about it. Honestly, this is a passion area for both Himanshu and myself. As an educator, I wanted to come into the schools and talk to the kids, and when I got there and realized that a lot of the programs were either teacher-run or kind of student-organized, I really wanted to figure out a way to bring a robust program to you guys, and I thought, how can we help? And that's when we went and sought out the grants. So this is what, essentially, at this point, our county commissioners had said, 50%, they conceptually agreed to provide that. But we also know that there might possibly be grants out there. That's how I started the pilot program. There might be some opportunities out there for you. I don't know off the top of my head. The ones that I applied for was kind of a one-time application. So that might be something that might help with your costs as well. But I did want to encourage that we're not trying to give you a large percentage of the cost. We're just trying to see how we as a county can be helpful, how we can work with you guys. So hopefully that's an encouragement.
And one of the things as part of this, when we brought all this to you and to our county commission, I mean, we worked behind the scenes with waste management, because if we didn't get the $9,700 contribution, if you will, in terms of their cards, that full cost that you have, the $38,000 that Stephanie developed, if we didn't have the waste management and we had to buy the containers like we did at the 4 pilot schools, that's the total cost, $38,000. So we were able to reduce that by getting waste management involved. So, we did that first. We didn't, because right now, waiting for grants, you probably do a few schools a year. And I said to Stephanie, let's go to our commission. Let's see if we can try to, get something to them to expand it to all the schools. And one of the things that they came back, and Dr. Rendell can add, is they said, don't stop here. Go ahead and take care of this, but come back to us later because we want you to go to all the charter schools. So, that's going to be the next step down the road is that's part of the public school system as well, and they want to do that. So we're not going to stop, but we want to help facilitate. And if this was in terms of like a commercial business that we go to, and Chairman Frost kind of indicated this, we always say, hey, recycling is a good thing. It's good for the environment, and you can actually save money in terms of your commercial, how often your garbage is picked up, and right-sizing your containers and reducing the amount that you're paying for, pickup of your waste. We had a challenge in presenting that model to the school district because you have your own services. And I think I applaud your staff for actually looking at it and saying, you have a lot of cost savings that you're potentially looking at by getting out of the garbage pickup business and the extra cost of the CNG. And that's where this $13,000 will be very minimal, and the positive impact that you have on the kids. I mean, Stephanie's getting calls from teachers and all the time saying, when are you coming and starting this here? So,
Mr. Searcy and then Mrs. Justice.
Jason would be proud of that thing you just said there, but
There you go.
I think that it's very important that, just what Ms. Beautiful lady here said, you don't get it if you don't ask for it.
sure.
And no matter how nice we are and how nice the county is, we need to ask. We've been told no a lot of times, by the way, but if you don't ask, you'll never get it. So
Sure.
you make that same speech to Jason and on our behalf, and maybe we can be successful.
Good. Mrs. Justice.
Thank you. I just wanted to take a minute to say thank you, because I've experienced the recycling programs at the 4 pilot schools. I've spoken with the students, and you're right. The teachers and clubs were doing it, and we ask so much of our teachers all the time. And they have so many expectations, but they saw that their students had a passion for this. We are not only educating students, we're creating the citizens of tomorrow, and you are helping us to do that. So thank you for all of your hard work in our schools with our students and our teachers.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments?
Yes,
Mr. Searcy. Yes, sir.
What is the volume of recycled material that the county has in all of your ventures compared to the school districts? I mean, are we a half or a third or 75% or?
It's a small percent. I think we could probably calculate that.
The county's portion is a small percentage, so
No,
we're really.
the school
ours is-
district, what we're talking about, recovering from the school, we can calculate that and we can pass information back to Dr. Rendell.
Just
But,
I thought maybe not know that.
I mean,
Yeah, what I had
you had a
estimated-
previous slide, right?
Yeah,
How many tons
I'd
we're
actually
talking about?
estimated, it's not in the slides, but I estimated that prior to the 4 pilot schools, we were recycling 2% of what we're taking to the landfill. So last year we took 1,541 tons of municipal solid waste to the landfill. Prior to the program, 2% of that was being recycled. With the 4 schools, it's 7% now. If we do the first phase, 10 schools will get us to 25%. And then if we recycled all the schools with the program we have currently, we'll get to about 36%. So
36% of what?
Our waste stream.
Our waste stream. So everything that we collect as a
Of
district.
ours.
Yep.
I'm talking about the counties and all of your buildings. If we do however many you said there, however many pounds it was, what does the
It's not a
county?
competition.
So I think
We're
for,
helping you reach that 75% goal. So we're a big player in the thing, in my opinion.
To put it in perspective, at the last fiscal year, we collected probably about 20,000 pounds, or 20,000 tons, I'm sorry, of recycling from the entire county. So I think from an estimate for the school, there was about 80 tons that came from the school district. So it is a very small percentage. That's just for the recycling. I don't know the garbage off the top of my head. But essentially, when we look at recycling, the recycling that comes through our facility includes all the multifamilies, all the single-family homes, and a number of commercial businesses as well. So it is a smaller percentage, but we still think that it's very important, especially for the benefits of the kids themselves.
I think the way to look at it is, what is the school district's carbon footprint, if you will? What's the impact that you have overall now, and what will these changes have? And I think overall, it's going to be a net positive. If you just evaluated your own operations, you're making a more of a positive impact with the changes that you're looking at.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
And I need to keep this going. But the question, and I'm just an old country boy, and I don't understand a lot of this stuff, but the thing, you have county buildings, and that's what I'm trying to get to. How much recycling do you have in your county buildings, the Big Red Barn, and all those other facilities you have that compared to the school district? How much volume do you have in those facilities, not all these households that y'all deal with every day?
It's not a number that's calculated or quantified at this time, because what happens with the pickup of the routes is Waste Management picks up the recycling at all the government buildings. They go from, they may go to McDonald's, they may go to another building, and then they come to a county building, pick it up, and so they're just picking up, trying to be more route efficient. So all of it is mixed. We haven't, it's a good point. We haven't, when you mentioned about a competition, we haven't taken the step to actually figure out what the volume that we're capturing as well. And
We only know ours because we have the special truck that.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Well, and was it in the final proposal that there was RFID in each of the cans now?
There is.
Does it measure not only location, but also the amount per? I think that was one of the potential things in the contract.
That was
Is that included?
like a recycle bank type of thing that
Right.
years ago. But no, it just measures the location that it's tipped, not the weight on the
If
cart.
you're trying to quantify how much.
What are you
you're
talking
saving.
about there? RFID, I mean, some folks
So
don't know.
radio frequency identifier, it's basically a chip that
Okay.
can be read via something that reads
Explain to these
RFID.
people out there.
Sure. It's used a lot in retail nowadays to keep things from going missing. But it also interacts with the trucks. It can interact with the trucks so that they know that a particular can has been tipped that day.
Right.
And when and all of that, so that.
And you're asking if it would calculate the weight
The
that
volume.
then is then dumped into the
It
truck?
can't. Here's the thing.
Match it to the RFID.
Yes.
It's high-tech garbage.
Listen, if you want to improve something,
You have to
measuring
measure
it is a great start.
Absolutely right.
So, just a thought. I'm always thinking a couple years ahead. Okay?
When do we sell the garbage truck?
Last Tuesday is what I'm hearing.
As soon as possible, it sounds
And-
like.
Are we going to have a significant cost in decommissioning that CNG site, or I'm guessing that's a DEP type thing, or?
I'd
We'll
have
have
to
to look
investigate
at
Okay.
that, let you know.
But I guarantee it'll offset the cost of operating it, especially since we have repairs that are essentially due. So,
And I think the safety component too, Chairman
Right.
Frost, is the big concern. That's a very heavy machine to be running up and down the highways.
it is. It
Yeah,
is.
we actually think we'll see a bit of an insurance savings.
Awesome.
We're looking into that right now.
Great. Good. Any other questions, comments? No, that's it for,
Thank you for
Us.
coming today.
yes, thank you for coming.
Can I add something?
Mehta.
I know this is just a presentation, right? But one of the directions we have from our board is that what's the pulse of this committee here or group in terms of the next step on our end would be to go back to our board and work with our county attorney on a cost-sharing agreement with the school district. And is a direction to go forward with the 50% agreement that our county attorney can.
I think the direction, yeah, they don't vote in this format. I think the direction is to move forward with the expansion, but to try to see what the best deal we can get. So we'll,
Make good deals.
So this will be an action item on our
Eventually.
agenda.
not
Not
necessarily,
necessarily because it's under,
it's less than $50,000.
You need to be talking to him then.
Yeah. Let's not forget, this is an investment in, we're gonna see the return on the investment with reduced solid waste pickup and.
And we can also give direction that we are notified about this.
Yeah.
We feel that that's an important part of this conversation, just to have that follow-up.
Sure, sure.
It's in, and I know Mr. Searcy said country boy numbers, I'm doing country girl numbers. You've got like 130,000 of population, and if you put 18,000 and 2,000 teachers, you've got 40,000 people only having breakfast and lunch maybe, but after school and thing like that. So there is a big, well, let me just say, it's a, we could go all day with the RFID, blah, 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 but the thing is that we want to be a part of it and we want to go forward, but I just feel that, and I think I heard from someone else, that we'd like to see that that you go back and say that we're hoping for some sort of improvement on the container part of it. The actual program part of it is important to you and to us, and I'm sure it's obviously, to the environment, and the county also has that, as you said, to open a cell, which ultimately ends up in the county's cost. So that $10 million cost versus the $13,000, we have to look at that. But we certainly want the program to move forward and are willing to, that's what I'm hearing. We're hoping for, since you don't have that authorization, that you get back to us on that through our superintendent.
Well, the county commissioners, the Board of County Commissioners did already vote to authorize the 13,800 split. So it's just a matter now of working up the agreement. So we'll work on it.
I have a question. Is there a 501c3 that we could move money through in order to make this happen? If we were to solicit sponsorship or donations or something like that, is there a way that it would be a benefit to those who can?
You're asking if we would have a community partner that might help
Yes,
with this?
exactly.
I think that there's probably an
Like United Way
opportunity
or
for.
something?
Yeah, I
think there's a
imagine there's
community
some
partner that would help.
opportunities we could explore.
I think for the betterment of the
couple-
community.
Okay.
Yep.
That's always an
That's a
option.
good, I think it's a good
Let's
idea.
get the community involved.
We also have some vendors I think I could speak with that may do some donations of the cans that we purchase from now. See if maybe they, if they just give us, $500 each or something, that would kind of help offset the price as well.
Now we're thinking.
Okay, we'll get you started,
Thank you.
negotiator.
That's right.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
Okay.
It helps
Be
everyone.
good.
You're
It
right.
does, absolutely.
It does.
Because that's a dollar that can be spent in the classroom, not on the
Absolutely.
recycling, but on education. So it's a great point. So let's make it so. Even
Or
though
further
recycling is an
recycling
education,
education.
sorry. But on other forms of education as well. So, great points all. Okay, that's it.
It's the last of our presentations, and Mr. Chair, I don't think we have any obligations till 6 p.m.
Outstanding. Okay, anything for the good of the district? No further business before us. We are adjourned.